Today, it's a Wonderbots Day. So I'm really thrilled to introduce Sharon. I wanted to give a quick anecdote in my introduction to her. She's somebody that I've admired from afar for a long time. She's been with competitors, she's been with partners, she's been, in and out of my orbit over the better part of the last 3 years. But the place that we met was a forum similar to this. And the value system that I met her on was of giving and of community. And getting to know that she had these exceptional AI chops and was ultimately somebody that we would hire strategically at Wonderbots was just a bonus. So Sharon, it has been an honor to know you. I am so thrilled to get the chance to uncover your story today. And thank you so much for agreeing to participate. Let's get started with what I like to call the human introduction. Everybody's going to have a chance to see your LinkedIn. We will share that information, of course, afterwards, and anyone's free to ask questions. But let's talk a little bit about the Sharon behind LinkedIn, and who's the human,
Behind
who's the
LinkedIn.
woman, who's the woman behind the resume. Let's start there.
Absolutely, Paula. First of all, kudos to a week of Wonder Women around the world. We are day two, and I know we have a couple more days to go on, but it's been an exceptional journey so far. Kudos to you, Ria, and the team who are organizing it. It's been really incredible seeing more power women come in and converse and see how their success is like. And back to your question. So, how is Sharon like off LinkedIn? First off, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the Wonder Women Around the World Wonderbot series. So I'm Sharon Palawandram, and I'm based in Los Angeles, California. I've been living here for about 2 years now. I was living in Colorado for maybe 5 to 6 years, and then before that, I was living in New York City, but I was born and raised in Colombo, Sri Lanka. So that being said, I currently am the Director, Pre-Sales Engineer for Enterprise Solutions at Wonderbots. And I am in the artificial intelligence and consulting space. So that's a little bit, again, off on LinkedIn. But off LinkedIn, I am pretty chill. I go to if you ask about my hobbies, I'm pretty athletic. I like to work out and I'm very invested in bodybuilding. That's something that I do as a side quest. And I don't own any pets or anything. I'm in the Army National Guard for California. So I'm working to be an officer in the National Guard. That is another side quest of mine. So pretty straightforward, a little bit of things. I come with a mechanical and electronics engineering degree with an MBA, but life took a totally different pivot where I'm now in AI and software engineering. So that echoes to how, life changes, and then you have to take changes that excels you and supports you. I want to talk a little bit, Paula, about the first anecdote that you said, how we met. So something that's really nice is that 2 years ago, I believe it was 2 years ago, right? We had a Women in Automation panel powered by UiPath. So that was the first time Paula and I were introduced to each other because she was another panelist and I was a panelist. So at first, when I met Paula, I was like, wait, wow, we are totally vibing together. I would love to get the opportunity to work with you. And I think that conversation, just a little bit of a nugget there, and it escalated to where we're here today. She has been very supportive of Wonderbots, and it's been an amazing experience to be here. So that is a little bit about me.
Perfect. Well, no, and it's been an absolute delight. So you're no stranger to to explaining things and being really good at helping us understand and uncover and dig. I think that's the element that you carry through probably in all of your quests. The discipline required to do bodybuilding, the discipline required to really understand a technology, harness it, and not only get comfortable with the technology, but understand how to translate it, because not everyone speaks the tech language, right? I think those are all skill sets that you kind of acquire and nurture along the way. And what's so cool about you, Sharon, is that those things are evident over and beyond just, your charismatic and, super infectious personality. So when I'm thinking about you as a professional, I think, bubbly, she's a person I'd want on my team. She's a person that's going to explain it. And above all, she's really going to take facts into consideration. So as you've kind of morphed, and you mentioned it as a pivot yourself, but as you've morphed in your career and sort of grown and, evolved, what are some of the poignant memories or moments, in your career that, that kind of said, okay, yeah, maybe I go to the left a little bit. What were some of those milestones or markers that said, maybe it is time for a pivot, or maybe I do need to change? Like, how did you get from degree to AI? Give us a little context there.
Thanks, Paula. I think my whole life has been about constant change. I like to call myself a rolling stone because I have been changing so constantly. So back to when I first started college, I wanted to work as a mechanical engineer because my mom had a driving school back in Sri Lanka. So I thought, I just come from that background. I wanted to make everybody happy. Straight off of college, I got a job at Mercedes-Benz as a mechanical engineer. And then first 2 days of working, I was like, wait, maybe this is not what I want to do, because the core of what I wanted to do was something constantly evolving. I wanted to wake up every day to a newer challenge. So I thought, you know what? That is not my cup of tea. Let's explore something else. So back in Sri Lanka, I was doing a little bit of entrepreneurship as well. I had a couple of businesses, and truly working. I had worked with investors as well. And at the same time, I was getting my MBA because I wanted to get the business landscape. I wanted to understand that a little bit more. So that's when I got to know how data-driven decisions are empirically impacting business strategies and business goals and objectives. So at the first glance, that was my introduction to data science and artificial intelligence. And then I got the opportunity to move to the United States. And for those who don't know, if you move countries, when you kind of move from another country to a new country, you kind of had to reinvent yourself, do it all over again, because none of what you did in the past matters. So when I moved into the US, I was like, okay, this is a second coming of me. I need to know what to do. But I had a mindset that I wanted to go into data science, and I studied and I got a bunch of certificates. I've constantly been drawn to, the technologies of UiPath and Microsoft. So I was looking into robotic process automation, intelligent automation with artificial intelligence. And fortunate enough, I came into the space of UiPath, and I was working for a prior consulting company, Action Partners. Was there for about 5 years. And that's when, Paula, I was recognized for UiPath for document understanding, because I, again, was constantly reinventing myself, went from RPA to document understanding. And then I truly felt like this was my common ground where I could evolve and grow. So purpose of the story is I've been done many changes, but I've been fortunate enough to come into a place where I can now say, hey, I can actually thrive and I love to do it. And I'm very passionate about, the emerging technologies that we have in the business process automation or the robotic process automation industry.
So I was just saying, it's crazy because not anybody would just stumble into mechanical engineering, and then say, oh, RPA, right? Like that's not just something that inherently comes. However, the business of putting pieces together and being a great connector, I think, is very applicable and transferable. And so, for example, I was in process improvement, right? A very natural transition into automation, in the thinking and kind of thinking modularly. So when you kind of applied that and decided, I want to understand how these fit together and kind of advance yourself not only in RPA, but in document understanding, what are some of the ways that you continue to enhance your craft? How do you continue, making it new and learning more? Is it the same technology and new use cases? Is it learning more about the context of, clients or business? Is it an article you read? How do you stay evolved, right, and up to speed with a technology that changes so quickly, we can hardly keep up with our website, right? So how do you keep up with the knowledge, and not just knowledge, but expertise? You're known as an expert. So how do you maintain that status in an ever-changing agentic AI landscape?
That's a great question, Paula. And I've thought about this a bit because, I get this question all the time, like, hey, Sharon, AI is changing every single day. How do you keep up? And my answer to that is know your fundamentals because technologies change, fundamentals don't. Right. So if you are always, you want to be in artificial intelligence, just know your fundamentals, know the why we are doing it, other than, hey, today we wake up, a new GPT model is out, right? But we got to learn the purpose. And for me, I would suggest some of the really good courses are, I believe it was machine learning from Stanford. And there's a machine learning and artificial course from MIT. They are free for anybody to learn. And why I'm suggesting that is that it's a very, very basic fundamental understanding of what artificial intelligence, machine learning is. And once you ace the fundamentals, everything else is just a layer on top of it. So if you want to go into the latest, what's new in artificial intelligence or what's new in emerging technology, a podcast that I like to listen to is called Naval. I believe his name is Naval Ravikant on Spotify. Silicon Valley investor, and he talks about how technology evolves in the business setting, in the software engineering setting. What are your upskill requirements? So that's a nice podcast that I listen to, but then always being in tune and aware to news, hyperscaler landscapes. Microsoft does a great documentation. UiPath does great documentation. So whatever hyperscaler that you like to learn and grow, you can go in and see their upskilling skills. So those are a few strategies that I use to upskill myself as well as time goes by.
Perfect. And the natural next question, when we talk about having time to learn all these new skills, extra courses with the busyness of day to day, I love that it's beginning to be normal, kind of, to say, instead of saying work-life balance, we talk a little bit more about harmony, because I don't think there's ever such thing as balance. It's never perfectly aligned of the amount of time, energy, or effort that you put towards anything, really, right? It changes day to day. But how do you find that harmony between, your job, upskilling, making sure that you're current with things, and then still adhering to some of the hobbies that you mentioned at the beginning of this discussion? So is it time management tricks? Is it mental games? Do you have a morning routine? Tell us about your hack for getting it all done.
Oh, the harmony, I think, is the core of how we work today, right? So for me, I'm kind of an early riser. Maybe with a military background, I just kind of like to get up early in the morning. I am not a type A person, so I would have my coffee, tea, or whatever, zen into the day, maybe take 1 or 2 hours to just chill and be mindful and just think about what I'm going to achieve for the day, right? But the rest of the day, it gets pretty busy. But I also like to do things faster and get things achieved. I just find happiness in completing things. So I just like, hey, these are the 10 things I'm going to achieve for today. So, and I get them done. So while end of my day, I just listen to a podcast, I read an article and just rewind and end my day. So I think it's not that hard if you just, do what you're passionate about and divide and conquer what you can when you can. Some of my peers, we were talking the other day and they were like, hey, I'm going to listen to a podcast while I'm driving the car. I'm going to listen to a podcast while I'm like making dinner. So that's like really beautiful way where you get harmony between your daily life and your passions or, what you want to progress on. So there are many different ways, but I wouldn't say everybody needs to do some sort of way. Just find whatever that works for you and build on that.
No, that's fantastic. And I think those micro habits are how we build,
Yeah.
into things that we do, right? Pairing something healthy with something that's already existing in our routine. So that's a really, really good way to infuse, learnings and getting in that balance. One of the other things I think that always comes up, and not necessarily on women panels specifically, but when sharing your story, we often think of somebody or something that influenced us along the way, whether it be a friend, a mentor. So I'd love to hear a little bit with all the different experiences and, the across the globe journey that you've had. Does any one person or mentor stand out in your path?
Well, I think from a mentor perspective, I would tell probably my mom as my first mentor. She was a single mom. She had to, work her way to support me and my sister. She supported us through college. She has always been supportive. So I think seeing a woman actually take that power of, being a matriarch to her hands and really own that and just work with that without complaining, being unapologetic, has been inspiring to me from the get-go. And then I think in the workspace, I am always, whenever I meet, I get inspired by so many different women. So you included. So I think you always end the conversation inspired. And I always try to understand somebody's energy and just gain their perspective. I think that's a beautiful thing. I'm also a big fan of Melody Hobson. I think I drive inspiration from her. Melody Hobson is an investor. She is in the board of Starbucks. She was one of the first few females to own an NFL team. She's in the board for Denver Broncos. Go Broncos, if anybody supports. So I think from her, I drive a lot of inspiration from her because she's one lady who went from an assistant to a board of directors in 10 years. And she talks a lot about how success is like and how unapologetic you need to be to truly reinvent yourself and, find your highest form more than anything else. So I drive a lot of inspiration from her.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love hearing new nuggets and names like that. So I'll definitely check that out. One of the other things that I was thinking of as you were sharing is, not only the places where you garner inspiration, but tell us a little bit about when you have a bad day, because we inevitably are not always bubbly and full of light and shiny and all the things, right? And there's days that, whether it be hormones or the husband or the dog or the whatever, right? Life happens and
Yeah.
you have to figure out how to still show up. I think a lot of women, have always had to kind of almost, and I hate the expression, but feel like they have to man up, at work sometimes because, in fear of being too emotional, or heaven forbid, you have a feeling, and oh, what a weakling, to have to be out for cramps, for example. What is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
By the way, I just saw that Spain had passed for, monthly cramps is now a reason to call in sick. And it
Oh,
sounds so silly and petty, but those are kind of some of the things that you grow up kind of shoving aside and making sure, especially me, I entered the workforce very young. I was one of the youngest and always had to make sure that I measured, my personal stuff to not interfere in the workplace, right? And over time, you learn, right? Wonderbots is a family. Steve and Bhavyesh, our two co-founders, were at my wedding. It's a totally different relationship now at this part of my career. But I know that there's several times where I had to kind of grit and bear through it. I had to,
mhm.
blink back tears. So tell us a little bit about when those days are just yuck or bad. How is it that you still show up? What kind of motivation do you give yourself? What does that self-talk to Sharon look like?
Yeah, Paula, I think two things here that I want to talk about. One is how I go about a bad day. Like everybody, you're right. Everybody has bad days. I have bad days. So whenever I have one, I am fortunate enough to have a close knit of friends. So we all have a roundtable conversation about how bad our day is. The calls probably go in for 3 hours. We just decompress and let it all out. But I think I love nature. I go on long walks, long drives, really think. I'm not a person who reacts a lot. Maybe, that's just me. I just like to think on why something happened and just think on how I react that way because that is, from my perspective, my day can be bad, but what I can own is how I feel, right? I cannot change the environment. I cannot own how a day goes by. All I can own is how I would react to that day. So I'm very intentional about my reactions, and I just think about, hey, why did I feel that way? What can I do? And sometimes it's a good thing to be sad, because then you're like, hey, I'm having a good day at the same time I'm having a bad day, and I can balance it out. I have the emotions and feel for it. So a little bit about how I handle bad days. I talk a lot. I just do something that I love. I do shopping sprees. I'm unapologetic about that. If you want to do it, go for you. Go to a Target, TJ Maxx haul. Yay. The second question, Paul, you asked was, being a female, especially male-dominated industries. I echo to what you said a lot, because it gets emotional sometimes, right? And over the past couple of years, as I started my journey transparently, I always wanted to fit an emotional scale of being resilient. By my term of resilient was not showing emotion, or just having a poker face to situations and just not truly expressing my true form. And then one day, I went to a conversation which was very emotional, and I had a real poker face, and everybody was like, wait, why are you giving politically right answers? We want to know what Sharon thinks. So I thought about that question a lot. I wanted to, because I think the underlying gist of that conversation was, hey, we would like to know your true opinion without you just filtering anything. So I think over time, I've learned to be more authentic to myself. And I think when I was in the National Guard, one of my drill sergeants back in the day, he was telling me, like, a true leader, when you want to be a true leader, you have to be your authentic self. It doesn't matter. You don't have to form into a set of rules. You don't need to fit into a mold. You can totally be somebody who's completely different, but you just have to own your authentic self. That's where you find true grace and gratitude to yourself. So over time, Paula, I think even today I practice that. I'm just more feminine. I try to tap my feminine energy more and just harness that. I think that we have true power in being ourselves, being emotional. There's power there. So a little bit of me doing, how I was to what I was today. I think that's a really interesting thing, because a lot of women in the industry, they don't share their truest opinion just because of the landscape. They'll be like, oh, I don't want anybody to think I'm too emotional. I don't want anybody to think I react that way. But it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to, be authentic to yourself, because wherever you go, you should be accepted and you should be celebrated for who you are.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I think that, with maturity and experience comes
Yeah.
the temperament of what you called the reactions, right?
Yeah.
And learning that it's okay, if you do have an opinion, it's okay. But I think it trained me anyway to come with facts. So, so I'm very quick to, when I have an opinion, to go fact check myself. Does the data match up with what I'm
Yeah.
suggesting? Am I coming from a place of context, or am I coming from a place of emotion or
Yeah.
experience, which might be a little bit more tunnel visioned, right?
Yeah.
So it did teach me to go and ensure that I gathered the evidence, so to speak, so that my opinion wasn't just about Paula. It was about, Paula's view of the facts, right? And my input was an assessment of the facts, right? Now, of course, in marketing, there's opinions that fly on, things that have to do with, imagery or things like that. And I love that, at Wonderbots, for example, we have, this forum where we can all brainstorm and share ideas and share opinions, and look and, and see what everybody's kind of brought to the table. So I think there's a good balance of both, in my leadership style, but it was definitely born of learning that when I came to the table with an idea or an opinion, I always had something to back it up, right? Just in case my word wasn't good
Yeah.
enough. over time, my word is respected, and okay, she comes from a place of experience. But in those early days when I was trying to, to prove myself, or to learn, right, to get a chance to learn, at the big boys table, it was those experiences that really gave me that discipline to always check the facts, and
Yeah.
always make sure that I'm not just going based on my assumption or intuition, that I'm always checking in. So
Yeah.
I think those are really important skills. I love that. One of the other things I think that is just evident in the way that you talk is that you are very inspired, right? And you do gather a lot of insight and information from a lot of people. So inspiration comes in many forms. And I think you talked about your mother and some of the experiences there, but having, moved to a different country, built a home in a different country. I've done that too. There's an element of self-preservation that goes into that. And there's a poker face that you must have, whether it's languages that change, or where you get your coffee, or how you drink your, what you eat for breakfast. Suddenly it went from eggs to sandwiches, ham sandwiches when I moved to Brazil. So all of those things you kind of have to check in with yourself. So tell me a little bit about how that change, just the environmental change alone, impacted how you began to find your authentic voice. Did it shape it? What did it help it come out? Tell me a little bit about how Sharon evolved with that big migration, specifically the move. Kind of your, how you came to find your way around, wherever you first landed. And where did you first come when you came to the States? It was first where?
Paula, I'm a very adaptable person. That is my nature, and I'm lucky. I just like, okay, I'm a little chameleon. I would adapt very fast to a place. So Sharon moved to New York City, straight from Colombo to New York City. I moved right during COVID. So I came to New York, I believe July. Nobody was there. I was walking in Times
I was
Square
on my
by
way
myself.
out. Fun fact, I was moving to Philly when you were moving to New York then. So we were just crossing paths.
Yeah, yeah. So I was married at the time. So my ex-husband took me to New York City. It was super empty. I went to all the stores. Nobody was there. I was super lucky. But over time, I think being in New York, you just get face splashed with the aggressiveness of everybody. They want to be like, okay, time is essential. We need to get things done. I think that was one of the lessons learned, and that was a challenge for me to over adapt, because the way everybody was moving so fast, getting everything done. So I think that was a little bit of a struggle for me, but then over time, you just get adapted to why. People in New York, they don't have time. There is so much of traffic, and it takes like a million years to go from uptown to downtown. So you just got to do whatever you want. And then echoing back to the multitasking, you will see a lot of New Yorkers do so many things on the subway. They would read a book, podcast, talk to their family. So you just get evolved with the nature of the environment you're being in. That is one thing. Then I moved into Denver, which was more laid back. But for me, fortunate enough, I was easy to, adapt with the food, the culture. It was all good. But sometimes I speak to my friends who have done the same thing, and especially my sister, she moved to Toronto, and she holds culture near and dear to her. So then it was a little challenging for her to move from Sri Lanka to Toronto, and she still holds culture because that is important to her, and she still tries to find ways where she can identify with a local restaurant. She would go in and get a meal that is a Sri Lankan meal. I'm like, that is great, because she wants to identify herself to her roots. Whereas I would like to explore the new places, new destinations, and just see how, you can adapt and grow. Paula, if you're ever in LA, please, you get the most best authentic food here. I am a big pupusa fan right now. So, yeah, but I really like to adapt. And I think there's a beauty in learning new cultures and learning new experience as you go, because Anthony Bourdain is one of a big inspirer for me too. He traveled a lot of spaces, Sri Lanka included, learned a lot of culture, and I think I harnessed that energy by driving inspiration from him to just go to new places, do some untapped charters, and learn new things.
No, I completely agree. I think we learn so much from everybody. That's why it was so important when we put this program together at the beginning to have representation from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different countries, so that we could, kind of show that diversity of voice. Because there's so many similarities, but the differences are nice to relate to, right? So that you don't have to say, okay, I want to be like her, but I didn't do this, this, and this. Is that still okay? And the answer is yes. There's not just one path to, to an outcome or an end goal, right? So I love that. I love that we can share those. And I got really good at doing my makeup on the New York subway. I knew exactly how to how to position myself on the on the express so that I had enough time.
Yeah, that is a superpower though, because I cannot do that. I would just
the
have
Upper East Side all the way to FIDE, my first 2 years, a 5-story walk up. That'll teach you a lot about leg days and when to not have them, and how to do makeup on the subway. Life skills, definitely.
Yeah.
So Sharon, I wanted to ask you too, one of the things that I think, has been really important and that you've been known for as well, it's part of your personal brand, is being a UiPath MVP. And I know that having, taking care of all of the elements required to continue being part of that program is something that's very important to you. So tell me a little bit about how you found that program. What does the UiPath community give back to you? Why is that such an important part of your career development? And you always prioritize it. So tell us a little bit about the program, what it means to you, and why you're such an advocate and such a strong part for it.
Yeah, Paula, I think my first time I got to know what UiPath was as a brand was when they were going public. I think the day they went public was the day I actually started knowing what UiPath was. My previous experiences, I just joined that company on the day UiPath went to the New York Stock Exchange and they went public and all of that. But over the years, from the time I got to learn UiPath to what it is today, UiPath is also a rolling stone. They also always evolve themselves and they position themselves to be, in the latest enterprise technology offering, which I think is great because they're an evolution company who constantly evolves in the artificial intelligence space. So I believe it was about 5 years ago, I was introduced to document understanding, and I had a lot of projects that were very document understanding specific. So I got like 10 projects, all of them were DU. So I was able to build, and it was complex automations where, you don't have technology like that's available anywhere. So you had to customize those codes.
Pause real quick. For those who do not know what DU is, remember, this isn't just an intelligent automation webinar. Just real quick, tell everybody what DU stands for.
DU is called Document Understanding. So in the UiPath ecosphere of products, they call document understanding for intelligent data capture technologies, which means if you want to capture intent from a document, you want to identify, fields, values from a document, the principle of doing that is called intelligent data capture. And how you do that, UiPath offers a product called Document Understanding. So that offers myriads of ways how you can capture that data. You can either use a rule-based technology, or you can use a model-based technology with machine learning, AI, GPT models. The flavors are a lot. So going back to the principle, that's what DU is.
Yes. So I would cast it just like this. It's a digital reader. It's one of the many, many tools that takes a document and reads it, right? It can pull things. So, okay. So back to you with MVP status.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of customized projects. Paula, I was very, okay, this is my first time doing a job. I'm going into document understanding. I'm having complex projects. I don't know how to do it because there is, we don't even have it. But then the nice thing about UiPath is that it's open source. So you can customize code and you can customize your code base as well. So, okay. 2 months into this, I'm doing custom code in UiPath. So I think that that's where I needed a lot of hand-holding So I reached out to UiPath, and the nice thing about UiPath and UiPath community is UiPath is one of those big hyperscalers where if you become a UiPath MVP, you have direct access to the UiPath product managers and leadership. So even before I was an MVP, I needed help with, understanding how you can custom code. And I was introduced to UiPath product managers who actually helped me, succeed in these, in coding and just being successful in data capture. So that was like my first introduction to the UiPath community. And the UiPath community is also another space where if you need to go ask for help in, say you're a software developer, you want to go in and ask for help, UiPath forum will help you with all of those, the support questions that you need. So that was a nice way of just getting help as like a starter person who starts in UiPath and document understanding. So over time, as I got help, I was able to give help to people who wanted questions too. So I was in the forum, somebody has a very document understanding specific question. I always answered. I was like, you know what? This is how you do it. This is what you do. And over time, I realized, wait, I actually love this product stack. And, I might be really good at it. And then UiPath community, they reached out and they said, hey, we see you doing a lot of document understanding based initiatives. We have this program called UiPath Community MVP where you can go and help support at the same time, get support from UiPath. Would you like to consider? So that was the inception of how I got into the UiPath community program. But the beauty of the community is that you get to help people who are, in different ways. You get to help them with technology. You get to help them with their work. If they're struggling with their day-to-day work, they want to have, they want to drive inspiration. They want support. You get to support that. And at the same time, you get to learn new technologies from UiPath product managers. UiPath had an MVP call with Daniel Dines, who's the CEO of UiPath. So that linearity of just straight up speaking to the CEO as an MVP was a really nice experience. And I think that is also unique. UiPath is one of the companies that offers that. So I think harmoniously embracing that culture of developers and business persons, business analysts, solution architects in the UiPath community, that's a really nice experience to learn and grow with each other. Paula, I think for 2026, Wonderbots has the most UiPath MVPs. Am I right?
I think that's a fact. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
And
sure is.
yep. Yep. I think over time, I've gotten to know fellow UiPath MVPs from Wonderbots as well. And I think they've always been super helpful. And again, full circle moment. And now I'm at Wonderbots and we're all helping each other and helping the community as well at the same time, which I think is very special.
Yes, and I think one of the last years that they gave the UiPath Community Award to a partner, Wonderbots was actually both the regional and global recipient. So we have been very, very active in community, both with UiPath, our other partners. In general, the idea of immersion into all these different technologies and us supporting the time suck that takes, because we know it takes time. But it's a value system at Wonderbots that we've always supported from day one. And when we didn't have any, UiPath clients, for example, we did have UiPath MVPs, and those were the brag book stories that we took to clients in the early days of building that business. And now we're one of the top partners. I think we closed, the most net new logos, last year as well. So going from that in the 6 years that I've been here, it's because of the people. It's because of the MVPs, and for those Wonderbots folks tuning in, leadership has announced. We did say that on a couple of all hands that we want to be super, encouraging and supportive, and marketing will take a hand in that, because we believe so wholly that hands-on keyboard is the way that you start to understand the mastery. And ultimately, like you said, if you understand the fundamentals, the mastery of the technology that comes along is just plugging in. really and truly. So I think that's so spot on.
Yeah.
One of the other things I wanted to ask you about, in relation to, to the development, where you stand, and you've been in the AI space for a while. Is there a particular industry or niche or business or cause that you're hoping to bring AI to in the future that you see being able to be something that you could potentially change for the better?
Great question, Paula. So here's my take. I see artificial intelligence and agentic AI being adapted in many different hyperscalers of the world today. If you take BFSI, healthcare, manufacturing, supply chain, you get a lot of businesses adapting artificial intelligence, and that's the right thing to do because agentic AI is progressive today and it's going to have a big impact implementing agentic AI or artificial intelligence strategies to your business. So I'm in Los Angeles, and we are a very theater, cinematic, Hollywood city out here, and I live right in West Hollywood. So a couple of the emerging spaces that I see that still hasn't adapted is the creative space, acting, film, marketing. And this echoes to me because last year I was in San Francisco for a UiPath event where it was UiPath DevCon, where we just go in and talk about UiPath technologies at a conference that they had over there. And a couple of folks came in and they were all in the marketing and the advertising space. So they were really curious. Hey, talk to us about what technologies are there in the marketing advertising space. And that is so niche because even I did not think of it because I was going in with the mindset of, hey, I'm going to talk to implementing artificial intelligence in BFSI or manufacturing supply chain, but I never thought about how you implement these newer strategies in the creative space. So I think that's a little niche that that they are looking to harvest. And I think there has a lot of potential because the purpose of implementing these newer technologies is to have more time to be creative and have an innovation in your business pipeline. So I think creatives and marketing is a niche that I think that's very interesting. And that's an uprising demand that I see on the Pacific side. So I think that's very interesting.
Well, it sounds like we're going to have a marketing related agentic event in LA this year, so that we can pull those folks together. And I completely agree with you. I'm really excited this week. We're working on launching our marketing agentic suite. So the solution team, thank you so much for taking a peek at all the use cases that our internal team has come up with. And these are things that we're, going to market with this year. And I agree with you. It's a totally new buyer. I mean, the way that agentic automation is going to kind of connect the dots within an organization. It's finally marketing gets to talk to finance directly, right? Like, so what I spent here actually had impact there. Those types of data points actually being harmonious are possible now. We really can understand attribution, or we can at least gather the information we need to assess attribution accurately, right? And so these are milestones that we haven't been able to have. But I like what you said too, because the inherent reason to automate or optimize is to either increase margins, reduce cost, or be able to grow without scaling your back office, right? I mean, ultimately, that's why everybody puts technology in. And so I was always very hesitant as the marketing leader, at Wonderbots. I was like, oh, good. How do we let ChatGPT write our emails? Like it just felt so not human, and, that we were going to lose touch and that our voice would be gone. And I'm proud to report that I have evolved, and we're now, looking at AI and adopting it, in-house and internally, again, to free up time so that our creatives can be more creative and the frameworks are there. So I completely agree with that. I also am seeing a lot of do good works, in a lot of the use cases. Team Rubicon is a fantastic example, one of our clients from last year, that will be able to process requests faster. So relief can be granted faster. I mean, there's always an impact with paperwork to cash distribution that can be channeled. And these are the kind of things that we're able to solve for today, which is just so cool and so impactful. And those are the stories that I love being a part of. So one last thing that I'll ask here, and if anybody has questions for Sharon specifically before we close today, feel free to add them to the Q&A or the chat. But the last thing that I think we all, we were all kind of talking about in the prep session, and you're right. I mean, it's a fantastic week of a bunch of eclectic voices. But one of the things that, I think everybody was attuned to is actionable advice, right? Like, what is something that you can actually take away, either something that you implement in your day-to-day life, something that you maybe read, but what is something actionable that sets you up for success, that allows you to share an energy in both professional and personal life? What is it that you do? What's that look like?
So this year, Paula, I am very dedicated to owning my personality and being my authentic self. I know I've echoed that throughout this conversation, but why this happened is, and I think maybe somebody can relate to this, when you go in and when you go into a new space, a new conversation, big voice leak, like you mentioned, you always try to fit in to somebody else's narrative, right? You go in and you converse in a way, and then somebody else has another talking technique, and then you just question yourself, hey, am I enough? Did I do something right? Did I do anything wrong? You have that question, and you're constantly trying to fit in a frame, or at least I was in the past couple of years, just constantly trying to question my worth and actually thinking if I was good enough. So this year, what I'm trying to do is actually own myself and just say, hey, this is me, and just owning my authenticity. I think that is very important, because end of the day, when you think of, you asked me this, what does success look like? How do you find gratitude? I think for me is just being myself, and being my true authentic self is where I find grace, gratitude, and happiness in. So that is something that I try to purposefully pursue every day. And then another principle that I have is just be 1% better every day. Just do 1% good every single day. So what can you do something that you have never done before, and that scares you? Something that really scared me, like maybe a year ago, was running. I was petrified of running for some reason, Paula. I was like, wait, I cannot run a 2-miler. And then fast forward to today, I warm up with a 2-miler. So do something that scares you, and it's going to be okay, because once you do that, you're going to know, hey, the human body is capable of so many things. I'm capable of doing so many things. So do something that challenges you. I think that's very important. And then go somewhere where you have never been to before. It can be a new city, it can be a new park, it can be something like a new grocery store. Just go and check what's in, see what's new, try a new recipe. Always constantly reinvent yourself, try something new. Don't be within a box, because the world is humongous and there's so many things that you can learn. So those will be my takeaways. It's very, very simple, but I find true happiness and true purpose in fulfilling those fundamentals. Again, full circle.
No, that's fantastic. Sharon, I think that's wonderful. Thank you so much. One of the things that just when you were sharing at the end there that just came to mind is if you don't try something, how will you ever know you don't like it? I always joke, when I met my husband, all he ate was hot dogs, and he swore he didn't like sushi, and he swore he didn't like vegetables. And fast forward, he's the one, making broccoli, and we can't be sure how that evolved. So you can't say you don't like something. You can't say you have an opinion on something if you haven't tried it, if you haven't been there, if you haven't experienced it. And I think that's a great connector and absolutely fantastic advice. Thanks so much, Sharon, for your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Paula, thank you, everybody. Bye.